I think this is one of the unique things. I haven't seen it in person at New Life. I haven't been able to visit and be there. But observing your journey and from afar, one of the things that stands out to me is as if you guys have sort of embraced two worlds that you don't always see up close. It's definitely other churches are doing it, but it's not as common to see some liturgical forms,
Hmm.
whether it's call and response, and there's other things, and obviously the table as a weekly expression, and then also, but in the context of a big church with really good sound and dynamic worship and a charismatic sort of
Yeah.
evangelical worship expression.
Yeah.
And I just love to just hear your reflections on that, because for two reasons. One is I do think there's something about those two things working together that's uniquely
Yes.
perhaps important always, but for this time, that idea of
Yes.
experience in different forms. But then also, I think there's a bigger theme here of being able to draw from different streams that I think really marks a new wave of church expression. And so if
Yes.
you could just kind of give us a window in and kind of unpack a little bit about what that looks like for you guys practically, and how you've worked out things that seem seemingly at tension with one another, but have found a unifying pathway for it.
Well, you're absolutely right that I think there is something that the Lord is doing, because it's not unique to us. We keep discovering other places where they're doing similar things. And I think that the sacramental or liturgical and the charismatic are like, to use that old expression from the renewal movement days, they're like banks of the same river.
Mm,
They help us. The move of the Spirit, but one has a bit of an ancient structure, and the other has this sort of expectation of encounter. And I think both are really important. And then the second thing I'll say is, I think what the blend or tension is going to be different in every context. So some people might be in a context where there is an allergic reaction to anything ancient or liturgical because of the associations that it has. I've talked to people who come, in the Northeast United States, where there's a very Catholic negative experiences, let's say, with Catholic Church. They've said if we try to do that, or if we say the word Eucharist, people are like, "Oh my gosh!" So you do have to discern that contextually and find, roll the dial on what
mhm.
the right blend is. And even for us at our different congregations, our five English language congregations, we all do weekly communion, but we don't all do all the other stuff. I would say two or three emphasize the church calendar. One or two use some liturgical words, ancient words, for setting up the communion moment. Um, but so you have to find the right blend, and there's going to be opposition. When we even announced we were going to do weekly communion, people were like, "Well, don't you think it'll lose its specialness, if we do that every week?" Like, well, there's lots of things we do every week. We somehow manage to keep it fresh. So, so even helping people not have a negative view of the habitual or the ritual,
Mm,
and to say that actually habits reinforce our desires, and rituals and rhythms can be a way of bolstering our heart. It's because we desire to encounter the Lord, we do these things. And then another thing I would say is let the sensibilities of each stream, the charismatic and the contemplative, bleed on each other. So,
mm,
I've been in some liturgical churches where they do the communion stuff in the liturgy, but it's like there's no music, and we're just going to get through this. And that, I understand that. That's fine. But the charismatic in me is like, let's put a keyboard pad under that. Like, let's have the worship team playing under that. Because why wouldn't we come to the table with the expectation that this is a moment of encounter as well? Not
mm.
just when we were singing 10 minutes ago, not just during the altar call or whatever, but also here. So let that sensibility kind of bleed on those practices. And then in a similar way, let what the contemplative liturgical tradition teaches the charismatic is trust that God is at work even when you can't feel it,
Mm,
or see it. Sometimes as charismatics, we're so judging or gauging things based on the response or the emotions, and all of that is real. It's just not reliable. It's real, but
mm.
it's not reliable. So sometimes that's there, sometimes that's not there. And the contemplative tradition says, do it anyway, show up anyway, pray the Psalms anyway, and that's been good. So 10 years along, we've seen the richness of that.
Hmm. One of the things I appreciate listening to you and reading your work is I feel like you're grabbing some of the best from some different streams. And this is a bad caricature, but I'm going to attempt to sort of put some categories out there. There's definitely a stream within the church that says that, spirituality or Christian maturity is through information, increased doctrinal alignment. And so, and obviously there's a real positive view of that, like, hey, getting that truth, that catechism of like, here are the doctrines. So there's just like discipleship through information transfer. And then like there's critiques of that. And then you've got like James Smith writes, "You are what you love," and there's other works around that. And he's really talking about formation and like
Yeah.
that the things that we do actually form us. So then there's this view of discipleship through formation. And then the charismatic world talks a lot about breakthrough and discipleship
Yeah.
through encounter. And
Mm.
oftentimes those things are all pinned up and against each other. And there might be 4 other pegs you could put around the tent. But I feel like one of the things I find compelling about what you're describing is it's not a rejection or a reaction off one, but really actually trying to show a picture that brings some of the best of those together.